Okay. Anyway, welcome all the Armstrong family, and especially the Armstrong girls. Now, I know John Armstrong, who we're celebrating today as a very colorful person, as a fire chief in Marseilles. He was with the fire department for over 47 years. And most of that time, he was the chief of the fire department. And so he had 4 beautiful, ambitious daughters. Here they are. And they're each going to have some time to speak and tell about their life with living with a father that was very colorful, that everybody knew. So this is going to be quite exciting. Can you please go on? Like I said before, we're honoring a very colorful man from Marseilles, Illinois, that was fire chief for many years and was with the fire department for over 47 years. He had 4 daughters, John Armstrong, and today is, today is March 10th, 2019, and this will be also videoed, and it will be on our website, which is Seattle Sutton Marseilles Museum.org. In other words, ssmmi.org. So in a few days, it'll be posted, and you can see this whole program on our website. Okay. And so John had 4 beautiful, ambitious daughters, and then you'll hear from all of them. They'll tell you some stories about growing up as the daughters of the fire chief, and he loved his daughters. Okay, so first one speaking will be the oldest. I just asked her if I could tell everybody how old she is, and those that can't see her, you'll have to meet her. The oldest of the 4 daughters is Eleanor, and she is over 90 years old. And doesn't she look great? She lives up in Michigan. And then, of course, we have my dear friend Ruth Farrell, who I always say we have a lot in common. We have 5 children each, and when we came to town, my husband and I, in 1957, she's one of the first friends that I got to know, people I got to know, and she's been a good friend ever since. And we have a lot of fun. One time she was with me at some event, and I introduced her as somebody that we have a lot in common. And I also said, and we both paint our hair. And she said, no. That's my friend Ruthie. And then we have Pat, another sister, and she lives in Ottawa, Illinois. Excuse me. And then we have her sister, Dolores. Do they call you Dolores?
No, everybody kind of knows me now as Lori.
Lori,
but you can call me Dolores.
Okay, so that's the 4 beautiful, ambitious daughters that John Armstrong had that we're honoring today. So, oh gosh, I went over my 2 minutes. Okay.
So, we 4 daughters were asked to have this little round table of the life of our father, John Armstrong, and also a little bit about growing up in Marseilles. My father lived his whole life on Lincoln Street. He was born on Lincoln Street. He lived his whole life on Lincoln Street. His business was on Lincoln Street, and his precious fire department was on Lincoln Street. Each of us are going to tell you just a few short things about his life and our life growing up. And my first one is one morning, Thanksgiving morning in 1930s, I don't know which one. My mother had the whole family at our house. We had the dining room table extended. We had card tables in both living rooms. And my dad came up. We were almost ready to serve. She was almost ready to serve. And my father came up from the basement with a basket. and he said there was a hobo in the little jailhouse between Lincoln Street and the tracks that had no food. So before we could sit down, we had to wait while my mother filled this basket and took it down the street to this hobo in the little, I think it was an 1800 something jailhouse. It's been gone for years now. Anyway, she covered the basket with a napkin and he took it down the street. And the man looked under the napkin and he said, "Where's the coffee?" And I think maybe that could have been the last Meals on Wheels to the jailhouse. They still found us. When the hobos would go through on the freight trains and jump, they would still find our house. And my mother always served a meal on the back porch. We never put a chair out. They sat on the steps and ate, but they always found us. My next story, Bob didn't want me to tell, is my first babysitting job in Marseilles when I was growing up. And I earned 10 cents for babysitting. I roared down to the dime store. That's when we had the dime store, the 5 and 10 cent store. And I spent 10 cents on a tube of very bright lipstick. And the next morning, I put it on and I snuck out the house to go to school. I got as far as a corner, and here comes my dad's moving van across the railroad tracks with his 2 helpers in the front seat. And he slammed on the brakes, rolled down the window, and said, "Eleanor Jane, get that lipstick off."
I bet he swore.
You look like a mouse house in the fog. Only he didn't say outhouse.
Oh, Mom, I guess they fixed it.
Talk loud.
Sorry for that.
My dad had a letter
Oh, louder.
that he wanted mailed, but the only way the passenger train that went through town would stop to pick up the mail was if there was a passenger waiting to get on. The arrangement was for Bud Fleming to act as a waiting passenger, but then leave after the train had been flagged down. Then John said to them, "Well, as long as the train is stopped, take this letter."
It's the truth.
When I had polio, infantile paralysis, they called it then, my dad carried me upstairs at the old McKinley grade school for quite a while. When our girls went to camp to Hibachi, my dad took us all, our luggage and our orange crates in his big truck.
I think you got them all, Mom.
These stories somewhat describe Dad, his humor, his character, and his caring and fatherly discipline.
Hello, I'm Pat. Some of you don't even know me, but I'm still a daughter. My dad, my father, as Eleanor said, he was very, very devoted to the fire department. But we used to say that was his main purpose in life. But he also knew an awful lot about Marseilles, way, way back. He was very, very informative about that. But one day the fire whistle blew, and you should have seen our house. One ran for his boots, one ran for his coat, one ran for his hat. The other one had to go to the phone to find out where it was at. And he had his pants, his rubber slacks that he always had on first. If he was upstairs, he was down the stairs before we even had his boots. He'd put them on, he'd grab his stuff, ran around the house and down the driveway into the garage. We had to turn on the light in the garage, it was at night. And he was very fast. I never seen a man go so fast in all my life. Oh, and if the door was unlocked, we had to have that door unlocked. Then later on, the fire department put in a system that the operator would call and give the information, and that made it a lot easier for us.
You had to say 7.
Pardon?
You had to say 7 to the operator.
Oh, I didn't know that. Say that again.
You had to say the number 7 and then the operator.
I
would
don't
give you-
remember that.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, he did other things too. And at his wake, I was very astonished to hear these things. These gentlemen would come up to me and say, he found me an apartment to rent. He found me a house to buy to live in. He bought groceries for my family. My kids were hungry. He let this man from Seneca have ice. He said, John, I can't pay for it. That's okay, you need it, go take it. Sometimes he didn't even charge the people for moving. He found jobs for people. And this is a story about Mobile. He was a man of color. He came to Marseilles, and Dad took him under his wing. And at that time, at sunrise, no man of color or person of color could stay in the city of Marseilles. So he had to live out in the city, out of the city limits. Well, he took Mobile, and he taught him a lot of things. And one day he disappeared. Where did Mobile go? My sister told me that 2 men came in black coats and ushered him out of this big building he had. And I kind of remember being there and seeing him going out the door. And where'd he go? Well, later it was discovered that this Mobile was selling, what would I call it? Tires, illegal black tires. And at that time it was rationing. The gasoline was rationed, your meat and butter was rationed, and I kind of lost track of Mobile until one day. Now Dad hadn't retired yet. They were sitting at the kitchen table, and I walked in, and they were set Mobile, dressed real nice, hair combed, real nice looking young man. And he said, John, I came all the way from Detroit, Michigan to tell you this. I left you and went to Detroit. I found a job as a car salesman. Pretty soon I was managing the place, and eventually I owned it. Now I'm here today to tell you, to thank you for what you taught me. You set me straight, you loaned me money, you helped me in many ways, through public relationships, through how to run a business, money and loans. And I always remember seeing Mobile sitting there telling him, thank you.
That's a great story.
No, I was told that he rented rooms for $4 a week. I remember some of them. Now one time he was downtown, and he was sitting on the bench by the railroad track, and this is when he had his artificial legs. And there was a little boy sitting next to him, and he was talking, and all of a sudden he took his leg off. This kid got bug-eyed, jumped up and ran up Main Street. And he tells that story. He told it many times that he would laugh and laugh and laugh. Another time we went to Eagles on the north or on the south side of Iowa for groceries. And I had a car that only had 2 doors. And I put Mom and Dad in the back, and somebody was with me, one of you girls maybe. And as he got in, his leg came off. Well, he got out, and he went over and he sat next to the door by Eagles, and he said, I'm not going home with you, Pat. I'm going to find somebody from Marseilles, and I'm going to ride home with him. We said, okay. So we got our groceries, and we got in the car. I pulled up, I said, we're ready to go, Dad. I'm not going home with you. And I said, you know, it's going to get dark, and nobody's from Marseilles who's going to give you a ride home. So we got in the car, we got home, I came off again, and he said to me, I'll never ride in your car again. Believe me, he didn't either. One day I was getting, helping him out with housework, and I was into the couch, and I was taking off the cushions looking for pennies and dimes and money, because he'd take a nap, and that couch would have money. I said, there's nothing here today, Ma. And she says, Dolores was here earlier. And that taught us things. And then one time, they had a party up above the fire department. And there was, the club room was up there, and I don't know if my sisters was there or not, but I know there was a lot of.
You were babysitting me.
No, I was at this party.
Oh,
I remember that, I did babysit
Okay,
you,
okay.
but, maybe I was, but I remember I went and got something to eat, and all the kids were gone, and they were younger than me.
Okay.
So where'd they go? We went out the door and two rooms, and there was a shiny pole with a hole around it. They were sliding down the fire, what do you call it? Fire pole. And I thought, if that little girl can do it, she had to hop and catch it and go down, I can do it. And that was pretty fun. Somebody came out and got us and we couldn't go back there anymore. Not anymore at all. Oh, let me see. I had a bunch of stuff here.
Oh, yeah, you did great. You know, when we were talking about upstairs at Bubbles, the party and all, I thought you were gonna talk about the time, New Year's Eve, when there was this huge, you were babysitting me at Dolores Bubbles' house.
Oh.
Okay, and there was a huge fire across the street and down a ways. It was a 2-story frame house. At one point, I think someone named Shirley lived there, believe it or not. But anyhow, I was little. My chin came up to the windowsill, and we watched the firemen who had been partying, and they were all too far gone. You know, they were all bombed. And we watched them put water on this poor house until it became an ice palace. And the next day, it was very beautiful, but totally destroyed by the water. They just kind of overdid it. But anyhow, that's what I thought you were gonna say, because you were babysitting me that
I
night.
remember that.
But anyhow, I just have to say, growing up with my father was kind of a fun thing. And my friends liked him, he always cracked jokes with them, and anytime I got in trouble, which wasn't very often, he basically made light of it. And if people were nasty to me, or, you know, that did happen every now and then, he always stood up for me, and I certainly appreciated that. But you have to remember that he had a business, you know, he had a moving business. He was an agent for Great End Moving Lines. He did a lot of back and forth to Chicago for the F&M, like Pat said, getting produce. And among other things, I remember him moving gas drums, and he just had all these other little side things that he did. And when I got older, he got up very early in the morning to go get the mail in Grand Ridge. Do you remember that? And then he had to put the mail bag out here on the pole for the train to pick up, and he did that for years. He did a lot of things. And of course, his great love was, beyond the fire department, was this town. And I have a book which I took when he died 30 years ago from his office. And I should have given this book to somebody a long time ago. I thought I was going to type it all up and have it published, because it is an incredible book. He kept incredible records of everything that happened in this town. And I'm going to give it to the Historic Society today. And hopefully maybe somebody will take it and type it. And I mean, I'd pay to have it published, but I can't type with a hoot. But anyhow, at the beginning of the book, it says, when it gets into this book, it's supposed to be complete and available and ready for publication. If ever completed, I intend to have 1,000 copies to sell for $6 a copy. So I started to read this yesterday. I hadn't touched it in 30 years, I'm ashamed to say. It's incredible. He has everything that ever happened in this town, every year, starting from 1832. No effort was made to develop this discovery for over 175 years when coal digging became a contributing factor for the industrial development of the area, including Marseilles. But throughout this book, it's in his handwriting. We've got story after story after story. When buildings were built, who built them, where they are, where they were moved. Just the whole, and he ends it in, this was early, but it's really very interesting. So now, I have to tell you a little bit about my life as the youngest. I didn't line up and pass out the boots and do all that because they were doing it, and I was too little. But I used to walk down to the office. Remember, some of you remember the orange funny building where he had his office? And I'd walk in there and you could cut the smoke with a knife. I mean, they were smoking pipes, and his buddies, Danny McDonald and Wilbur Smouse, and was it Nate Fleming? Was that his name? I don't know. They would all be sitting there, as Dad would say, shooting the ball. And he'd be, doing a little book work for his moving business and stuff. And I'd walk in just probably to get some money. And I'd walk in and those guys would say, "Here comes Pocahontas, daughter of the chief." And that's what they always called me. And it was just kind of cute, But I have a little article here. Do any of you remember Vera Naretti?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she actually scared me.
Oh, no.
She wrote for the newspaper for Ottawa and Marseilles, and Vera, and she was just a character, a real character. I think she wore turbans sometimes, but anyhow, I think every time she couldn't come up with an article, she'd go interview my dad. Because I have countless newspaper articles that she wrote about him, and he always told her stories. And in this particular article, he told the story of Par Ryans, who in I don't know what the date is, drove his Model A Ford from north of Marseilles in a really, really bad storm, and he had the sides all buttoned up and everything, and he was all bundled up, and all you could see of Par were his eyes, and he always parked that car in a barn, and he tells where the barn was, and I'm not going to read the whole article, it's too long, and he always parked it there, and when he drove through the storm, he kind of pulled in, and it was kind of bumpy. Well, that night, the night before that barn burned down. And Parr drove the car into the barn, thinking it was still there, got out of his car and realized the barn had burned down. That was a story that she wrote at that time, but the father's business entailed hanging around the Rock Island Depot, where we sit today. Hanging around the Rock Island Depot, waiting to make deliveries of freight and express to local houses and business houses that when ordering was just about everything, when you just ordered everything through the mail, kind of like getting it online now. Hanging around the telegraph office in the Rock Island Depot, Johnny, as he was popularly known, through listening at the tip-tap of the Morse code, learned to decipher messages coming in without a single lesson. He was 10. Young as he was, he had an extra sense on ethics, knew more news than anybody in town, but kept the confidential messages locked up in his head. I rather doubt it. I rather doubt it. Happy that I'm going to read you something that is poignant, and my son wrote it, and he's here today. And this is what he wrote. And the title of it is Greatness. There was a man, my mother's father, who stood tall over a town since taken by time, where once he worked to prosper. Time too took him, piece by piece, to when he could not walk, to the corners of the streets of offices or storefronts, where he came to rule. He stood as a testament for all the people of this place, and those of nearby places who took great pride in his acquaintance. I have heard stories, and I remember stories too, some not all flattering, but stories nonetheless, that have left his thumbprint on all the doors of this one town and the hearts of many. When he left, a hole remained in me, a hole that slowly gets filled, the one that yearns to have known him more, and making one of my impossible wishes that I could talk to him again, to ask him questions, of which I would expect simple response with a nod of his head and a rap of his cane, and a great grin and click of perfect teeth that came out of a jar. You four sisters.
As well, so I really miss Johnny. We got to be good friends. He told me all about the Marseilles jailbreak that one time, and how they had somebody had snuggled in a hacksaw blade and they cut a hole in the cell. And he actually, when we had the cells here, he actually took me in and showed me where they had cut the hole, and you could see where they had patched over it. And he says, I know who smuggled that hacksaw blade in, and but I promised the guy I would never tell him or tell anybody that he did it until after he was deceased. Well, I never did ever learn who smuggled the hacksaw blade in, so if there's anybody else around here that does, if they can let me know, because I hate leaving that story open. So Johnny was a great friend, and I really miss him. Thank you.
Did an excellent job of honoring your father, and he's a grandfather, great-grandfather, whatever. And we thank you, and I hope the monitors out there work, because I enjoyed it in here. Anyway, so thank you so much.